I think like from this whole experience in India, the kind of talent that's there is great, but then I think the center of activity and information, the exposure is still leaps and bounds more in San Francisco.
Oh no, definitely. See, San Francisco has also a lot of not just the thought leader in the AI space, but a lot of actual researchers, right, who actually did well in terms of like pioneers in all the AI, like research and everything, even the companies. So definitely SF is like very much ahead. I think they are like basically, like the arrowhead for the whole there, but then people have to catch up everything around, like on the application side, other layers like vertical things. I think that's what like many Indian companies are doing. But I think still everyone is closely following San Francisco, the news on Twitter and everywhere, everything. And as soon as things come out, or new paper or new models announced, like there's like a lot of buzz going on. People are talking about it, and all the people that I know, like I meet when I go to Bangalore or Pune, Delhi, they are always like ready to come to SF. They're like waiting to get some kind of visa just to kind of have a feel of what's going on here.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I don't know if the audio is able to catch the sirens that have been going on, but this is a very interesting setting where we're in the middle of San Francisco. We're talking about agriculture and AI in agriculture. So I think one of those things that has been fascinating me, I've been in AI for a while, was back in 2019, 2020, AI was being picked up in agriculture from a computer vision standpoint. I think John Deere came up with like these amazing tractors that did tilling and all of that with AI. They were I had friends who were working with some other companies on weed detection and removing.
Correct.
So I have seen the wave of AI in agriculture, and it's been very fascinating to see it move towards Gen AI now.
No, true. So the early applications of AI, what we have seen was mostly like image-based CNN or something similar, where using image for, as you said, like weed detection or a plot boundaries, or using satellite images to find out the patches of disease and things like that. They were like the early applications, and what we have seen that these applications are very much useful for like developed country, like in the US or like the Central Valley, California, where you have like a huge farm, so you can take pictures. Even in 2013-14, when my first startup was incubated, we had a Stanford graduate working on using planes to take pictures of the Central Valley, and then using that to kind of find out disease in the patches of the trees that are like dying and things like that.
I think that's now moved to drones, because that's
that's now drones. Yes. But yes, these has been like the early and like the application that works, because they have been taking pictures of diseases and the like a top of the field from a long time. So and the CNN model works very well when it's annotated.
But I've seen the Gen AI craze happen. Before we get into Gen AI, I would love to know like what's the origin story for you and getting into this whole agri-tech with AI field.
Yeah, so very fascinating. In the sense, I grew up in a farm, so my roots are in agriculture. My family is in farming. My dad, we own farm, and we whenever I go back to India, like a visiting farm. So
what are they farming, just out of curiosity?
So we used to do lentils and beans. Then we moved to sugarcane, and now we have mango orchards.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we've been like around, and I know everything very well. So like I have worked on a farm. But I think the fascinating is like when I moved to US for my master's, Ph.D, work on AI semantic web projects, but came to Silicon Valley and got into like this aura that started working on like the problems that basically designed for or solving problem of like 1% of the population, like mostly like like US populations or so we build like a smart jewelries or over there updates for the car and things like that, which is basically affecting like the populations which are little bit well off. And so after last startup got acquired, and I kind of realized I used to visit India a lot. I still visit, and I went back to the farm, and I saw my dad's like condition in terms of like how they were like struggling with like a regular day-to-day problem, like over here we have like a price estimation for plots, like a zestimate and all. In India, like if you want to buy or sell farm, there is like a no ground truth and
Yeah.
the truth, which is government hasn't been updated for 20 years.
Sure.
So the farmers cannot bargain the prices. There is a problem with farmers throwing away their like a crop, or sometimes the price of the commodity going like crazy up because there is no logistic mechanism, or
Yeah.
like
Or
this-
monsoon affects things.
yeah,
in
and
India.
and there's so much things that can be just solved by the simple data analytics,
Yeah.
the logistic problem, but it's not there because nobody has like a paid real attention. So that's where I realized, like, I've been doing this thing for a while. I think it's for me to start like contributing back to my roots and see if I can jump into bringing some like AI products into the like agriculture domain in India, and maybe also the objective was that like, can I actually build something that goes inside the farmer's hand?
Yeah.
Because one of the bigger problem is like the middle layers, like, because there are like on one side you have farmers, other side you have like the people who manufacture things like a seed, pesticide, fertilizers, and
Yeah.
all equipment manufacture, but there are like a huge middle layer, which is actually the what makes money. And if you remove them, then basically farmer can get more benefits and
Yeah.
manufacturer get more benefits. So decided like I want to build tools for farmers which go inside their hand and they use it, basically making the knowledge accessible to them.
Yeah, and it seems like India, agriculture and rural India is already developing. Almost every time I go, I see new things. Especially everybody has a smartphone now.
Yes.
And even though the size of the farm might not be as large as we see in the Western world, the motivation to improve and get more out of that land is there. So people, I'm sure, are constantly looking for information about their crops and about the diseases and about how they can improve and upgrade themselves with skills.
Yes. So I think there are like couple of points over here. So we started working in agriculture like 5 years back, and I think that was the time India started having this like a cheap mobile internet and like a cheap phone
Yeah.
kind of thing, and everybody started having it. So suddenly everybody had access to the internet. Everybody in the sense like huge amount of people who can, like as you say, like someone with like a 2 acres, like very small farm, but still can have like a very cheap $100, $50 Android phone and like a very cheap internet connection. We also saw that everybody around the world can just say like, these people mostly because they are language and literacy barrier, not good at adopting technology. But at the same time, we saw that like these same people have been using WhatsApp and Instagram making reels,
Right.
and nobody ever have to go them educate.
Yeah.
Like, and so the myth that like the farmers are not adopting technology, that's false, because
Yes.
they adopted WhatsApp without anybody teaching them.
Exactly.
So that's the point we realized that like they are ready to learn, but I think the problem was that there were no one actually trying and targeting farmer to give them the information, right? Say, and that's where we actually started our journeys. Like, hey, they have phone, they have internet connection. What is that part missing that they are not getting information? Because until now, even like after we started working after Gen AI's introduction, that time what was the thing that like if farmer has to get information, he will go to the like nearest retailer
Yeah.
or a shop and ask them the question. He doesn't have access to like a very state-of-the-art research or universities or something they can, and because of language barrier,
Yeah.
they cannot just go research online and find out the solution.
Yeah.
They have to rely on the local supplier.
Right.
And that's where we saw that like there is something that we can bridge the whole the vast knowledge that is been produced by all this institute and research and everything is available,
Yeah.
but not available in their language.
Right.
So can we actually bridge that gap?
But more like even before the language did, and I'm assuming like 2022 launch of ChatGPT, 2023 we saw the whole wave of GPT APIs and hackathons and all of that. The information, if you remember early days of ChatGPT, was 2021 or some older information, and access to information or what it is trained on was like the whole internet. So
I'll
I'm
tell you
pretty
the
sure there
story.
was this like fitting problem wherein there's this information that the ChatGPT has, but this is like, even though the chat interface is useful, the information is just not there.
So I think that is the advantage. Like that is why like we have like couple of year of lead in the whole industry, at least
Yeah.
agriculture space, because GPT-3 came out October 2020, GPT-3
Yeah.
Da Vinci, and at that time we were trying to automate farmers' life because we saw that like they cannot even write description of what they're trying to sell.
Yeah.
GPT-3 was there, which was summarizing very well.
Yeah.
So what we started doing at that time, collecting all the information from universities and the papers, sometimes it's published, sometimes it's internet or not, started doing OCR, collecting and converting them, and started using GPT to actually kind of summarize them. And what we did, whenever farmer tried to sell something, say like I have a turmeric or I have a banana, the whole description of the product on wherever they're trying to sell automatically get filled by GPT-3 description. So we started using since 2020.
Yeah.
It was not a chat interface at all.
Right.
It was like we already pre-populated all this information about what you want, and using GPT-3 created information from the factual thing which collected. So that's how we had like 2 years of like lot of data collected around all the practices, like what these guys are suggesting, how to water, what seed to use, all those things we have collected on like a large level.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, you know, GPT APIs came out. we were like the first one to create like the agriculture co-pilot using voice.
I remember that. I remember at one of our MLOps community events, you were there and you showed us, and it was like just fascinating.
Yes. So this was basically March 2023. It was like long before the conversational voice conversation in OpenAI or Google came out. So what we did, use the knowledge base that we have created. Early days we were using GPT 3.5 Turbo, which was like a cheap enough for us to use, and using the entire TTS STT pipeline, we enable farmers to communicate in the all Indian languages. So basically now they can directly talk to AI, Generative AI, using the knowledge base that we have. They will get like a good, accurate information. And 3.5 will be used to kind of comprehend the question and create the answer. And they can basically get back the answer in the same language. So like it's a conversational, not as real time as what we see in GPT.
Because the translation was also going on.
Because GPT still doesn't work very well in all languages.
For sure.
Like, you know, it's like Indic languages are still not there. Hindi it may work, but there are like 22 languages. So we were able to actually do it for all the languages. Use like regular models, not the Gen AI models for TTS and SCT. But it was done, and that's where we figured out that like, okay, farmers, this is the gap that we always wanted to bridge, because they always wanted the knowledge, but it was not available in their language, or they cannot type or read. So now they can just talk to it. And suddenly we realized, because the app went viral, it's in every newspaper, people are talking about it, farmers reaching out from anywhere, like they're just calling us, sending messages, say like, hey, we like it, can you add this information, can you add tractor information, can you add this seed information, this is missing. So the overwhelming response that we received from everywhere around, we were like in all the talk shows and even like a radio meets, you know, all those like radio shows, they're like talking about this, someone is using in the train. But that was also like, so the first realization was that like there is a value proposition we have unlocked for a marginalized community, which was always kind of, you know, cornered from accessing the knowledge. Now they have it. But then the second problem arose was the Gen AI is expensive. Like we were growing crazy. We were like thousands of users growing every day. And we were running out of the Azure credit that we received. So like we had to figure out a business model and also reduce the price of inference. So that's where we actually started working on this model. So like, hey, build our own model, make it cheaper, inference cost, make it like a small model.
So obviously Gen AI is super expensive for running, but on the flip side of it, there was this McKinsey article that I read as well, and I shared it with you earlier today, which kind of, you know, echoes what you're thinking about, which is, you know, there is a lot more to do in agriculture with Gen AI. Obviously, you know, the computer vision kind of use cases still exist. But even with Gen AI, I think providing that knowledge to people, so information access, people just don't know whom to ask these questions or where to find the specific information about them, and having some natural language interface might work. The second thing, if I recall the article correctly, was about R&D, wherein, of course, you know, there's this bunch of papers being published and all of that might use Gen AI as well. And then the last one was in the enterprise, so these larger companies who are investigating maybe patterns in the market of like where should we put in money for commodities and all that, right? And so essentially, like straight from farm right to the plate, there's like so many different places where Gen AI can play a role. What's your general thought about this whole landscape?
This is also like our journey, in the sense like where we started from delivering agriculture information to the farmer, like the farmer advisory was like the first thing. And then we started actually working in like our search for finding business model and revenue. We started working with agribusinesses. And when we started working, we actually started receiving same thing that you asked for. They started coming out with like a specific request. So the farmer advisory, enabling them to directly sell something by finding the product list, customer care. These are like a regular Gen AI application that everybody is doing on some way, right? They started reaching out with some of the nuances, like some of the nuances that like a general purpose platform or a model cannot capture. That some of the diseases have like a 10 different name in 10 different languages.
Yeah.
Like the dialect in a Chile for avocado is different than in Spain.
Yeah.
So you have to capture all those nuances basically. And then the second thing, we started seeing the agribusinesses coming out to us, say like for the R&D purpose. So one company who is actually specialized in making seeds, like different type of, and so their research lab produces lots of seeds. And the current way of them is to take a picture of entire life cycle of the seed from like for 3 months, thousands and thousands of pictures, and there will be someone actually processing them and figuring out and all these things. So the idea is that like how about we just train model on the pictures and then can we make the conversation happen on top of it. Then we also trained like a vision model for crop conversation, crop advisory. So this is something we did for 3 crops, and now we are doing for 10 crops. So we have like 110,000 different images images of crop. So basically farmer can take a picture and start talking about the disease, say like what's going on here. Instead of just detecting, say I have leaf spot disease, they can say like what's going on, what should I use, and it will actually have like very much like a GPT vision, but it's very specifically trained for crop diseases and the symptoms.
So this is very, very interesting, because we don't talk about real use cases sometimes over here when we have these meetups. Can you walk me through like one of these use cases you've seen in the field, what people are using for?
Yes. So one of the interesting use cases that we have seen, and this is like one of the story that like kind of keep me going. So we have this farmer. He was like one of the early adopter, and he has this plant he grows called geranium, which used for making oil, like perfumes. So that's oil coming out of it. But there's a lot of agri waste out of it, which they have to actually throw away, or even sometimes pay to throw it away, like to get rid of it. So he kind of heard somewhere, I don't know where, that like the agri waste can be also used to make something out of it, like something useful. But he never had access to like research paper, arc severe or something like that. He cannot just go and like find paper out. But then he started just like talking to this app in like in his language, is Marathi, and like can I use it? What are the solution? And he figured out that he can actually make air freshener from the remaining air waste, agri waste. Then he asked like, okay, what are the chemicals I need to use? So he asked and find out the sum of the composition. He made air freshener. And then now he's like agripreneur selling thing on like Amazon and Flipkart, like and company. He's a startup which is incubated now.
But I'm also sure like this is not just a very isolated upliftment that we see with technology, especially in places like India, where even the farming community is very tight knit. I'm pretty sure when he's doing something, farmers around him see it, and then they can think how to apply in their things, right? So
agree. And I think we have seen. And the farmers are also very much, I would say, like that like they accept the technology more than like other people. Like we have seen like most of the folks like who are always around the technology, they will sometimes resist it in terms of like I don't like it, this is like this hallucination, things like that. They do understand that there is a hallucination, it's a new technology. They understand like I never had access to something like that before, but I have it now. So it's my privilege that I have. Like it's not like they think as a privilege. So they come back to us when there is a wrong answer, there is a hallucination, if the missing information. So like, hey, the information that you had is September 20, like some like the GPT-3's date. So it's like yes, it is old. We haven't got this new data. We will add it. Then there was an event where someone actually traveled like a 200 kilometer to see me in Bangalore where I was speaking, because he has this problem where he has this not very skillful workers who use his tractors and keep breaking it because they don't know the exact setting. So he goes back to the Mahindra, who is a tractor manufacturer, and say like, hey, can you guys give me manual? So like, we don't have manual or teaching thing for you. You have to go to the people who like Education Institute. Education Institute also say like, we don't have something to train your skill worker. So the equipment manufacturer suggests him that why don't you buy a cheaper version? So if that worker keep breaking, you are not in loss. So like, this is not a solution. So he asked me, he's like, hey, can we start actually adding manuals? And like something where we actually can set it up. So this guy just get like basic information. We start like, I have like a very humid soil or not a humid soil, a dry soil. This is this is the equipment name. What settings I should do? And so like, exactly. So now we are actually looking into working with equipment manufacturers and say like, hey, can we enable your manual inside, basically maybe just in your app, but at least your customer should know all those things. Basically, they cannot just keep breaking things. This is like easily thing to like make it available.
You also mentioned Chile, and that comes to this whole language. How do you have multiple other languages and things like that? What's your take on like knowledge proliferation in other languages from one language and things like that?
Yeah, that's actually that's a very interesting point, because see, the understanding domain nuance is very important in terms of having different diseases that has like transferability, disease name which are associated, or multiple dialect has a multiple different name, different way of like farming practices and all, which are sometimes transferable, sometimes not, and it even changes in a region to region. Basically, even like one country like India or Chile, north and south may have like completely different way of it. So those nuances are very important. As I said, like in a Chile, so in a Chile, our experience, like we are working with one of the largest distributor, helping them to kind of create like a sales co-pilot for their sales team. And I think their thing is that they have like a complete different dialect of Spanish, and their customers, like their customer, like B2B2C, so like their consumer or the customer wants the answer to be received in Chilean dialect. That's what they prefer. So like now we have to kind of figure out in a way that like how our data set that we train for the Chile model have like a different way of like describing things. So this is very important, and I think so our objective is like because we have figured out a way to kind of synthetically generate data and train model quickly. Our goal is like, let's create continent or country wise 7 billion 8 billion parameter vertical models that basically very specifically designed for that. So then you can just deploy that. If it's a Chile company trying to do Chile thing, then we kind of have like a Chile model. And it's like not that expensive if you have large enterprises working. We don't want to have like a very small country, but Brazil, India, Chile, US, like some of the large country with like agriculture is where like it's a main thing. We can have like a smaller models for their practices.
I love it. And it must be super rewarding, not just from a technology perspective. You're building some cutting edge small language models and large language models with different languages. So when you and I talk offline, we've talked about the infrastructure side of things. But how has it been personally? I hope it's personally rewarding and fulfilling. Tell me what's going on there.
Yeah, so there are like a two reward. One is satisfaction when you hear the real farmer, because then you relate to your own story, because you are coming from the community, and that's something you've been working 5 years to actually bring this thing. Finally, you found a product that they use it, and there is like a value from coming out of it. And the second satisfaction is basically what we are seeing is that we were like pioneering the conversational AI. We were pioneering the vertical models. Like when we released the Denu model in agriculture, there were no any vertical models. Nobody tried it, even though it was not very good. But at least we tried. We created. That was the time we created like a synthetic data. There was like a November 2023. We had a lot of instruction from farmer conversation, but the instruction, the data was not very good. In the sense like it's like farmer will say like mango disease or blah blah. They will say like a 2-3 words, not a sentence in all. So we at that time used like a the augmentation of the data and create like an instruction pair. But like the thing is, we could have always moved to like a finance or health or something which is like more rewarding, giving you more money, right? Finally, but we stuck to the grounds like, hey, no, we're gonna stay to the agriculture, because this is what we understand. This is like we are vision driven in the sense like what we want to do. I think there was also kind of connected Chile question is in agriculture is like a 9 trillion industry worldwide. There are like a 2.5 billion people in the world connected to the agriculture, but you won't see any company around more than $100 billion because it's like such a kind of small companies all around the world, and they are not connected through like a single knowledge highway. Basically, all the knowledge within Chile is like confined to Chile. In US, Mexico, US has a different way of purchase habit, farmer habit, how they buy. India is completely different, and all those knowledge is kind of confined to either like some big companies, a sales guy, or localized, right? So we want to try to kind of connect all those things with like a model that we train, connect, like can we see actually the patterns going from this country to this country? Can Chile's model, which is working out, can be kind of replicated into India maybe, or Mexico, which has like a better farming output? and India has the same size of farms. Can we actually replicate that thing? Which
Wow.
way we can replicate so we can actually also increase the
So
farm
it's not just the language; it's also the culture as well as the
practices
and
yeah,
traditions that go around with
traditions,
it.
yeah, exactly.
Might be similar
Same,
because the
yeah,
problems are the
yeah,
same.
it's the same weather, same farm
Yeah.
size. Can we actually get the Indian farmer to actually that level?
Yeah.
What Mexican farmers are getting,
Yeah.
right? Something like that.
The last question, because we have a meetup to get to, but just what's next for you, and where do you see this technology evolve into?
In terms of AI, I think so. So I'm very much bullish on bringing down model to like a smaller size.
Yeah.
Very application specific thing. Like you will always have like a larger base model which do everything, which is like your assistant helper, like how you use ChatGPT. But like all the application that we talked about, like helping someone with the user manuals or setting up the tractors, or like advising about seed, all those things which are like a one-off conversational thing,
Yeah.
you really do not need like a large model.
Right.
So my thing is, and large models, just like regular physics, 2 trillion parameter model will use more energy than a 7 billion
Yeah.
parameter model, right? So even like a physics, cost, everything, like you cannot say like, okay, oh, ChatGPT or OpenAI APIs are very, very cheap.
Yeah.
But you still know that it's a 2 trillion parameter model. So everybody will catch up someday. Then 7 billion parameter will be always cheaper than the 2 trillion, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one thing. And I think second thing is like, we have started seeing a traction around like everywhere, for at least us on like as a company side,
Yeah.
that we have like right now all of our customers are all from inbound. And what we are seeing there, like, we are trying to create this like a, this kind of thought process, or thought leadership. I don't like the thought leadership word, but something in
Yeah.
the agriculture ecosystem,
Right.
that we can actually bring this, bridge this gap between farmers and the manufacturer directly,
Yeah.
and see if we can get like a single knowledge highway.
I love it, Pratik. Thanks so much for
Thank you,
joining
thank you.
this. This is again Autonomous Humans, and hoping that if you're listening, you might want to join us and share what your journey has been with AI, and how is it helping you be more productive. How do you find fulfillment, and maybe talk about the future. Pratik, don't go yet. I want to continue the conversation.